The subcommittee will come to order. Pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 4640, the Western Hemisphere Drug Policy Commission Act of 2014, and I ask unanimous consent that the text of H.R. 4640 as modified by Salmon Amendment 54 that was provided to your offices on Wednesday be considered base text for the purposes of markup. So ordered. Without objection, the base text is considered read and open for amendment at any point, and all members may have 5 days to insert remarks for the record, and I recognize myself to speak on this measure. Today, the subcommittee meets to consider H.R. 4640, a bill to establish the Western Hemisphere Drug Policy Commission. I want to thank full committee, Ranking Member Elliot Engel and his staff, as well as Representative Ileana Ross-Lehtinen and Ranking Member Siris for joining Mr. Engel and me in moving this piece of legislation forward. We've learned in recent subcommittee hearings that transnational criminal organizations and narcotics traffickers continue to operate with impunity throughout the Western Hemisphere region and have become increasingly sophisticated and violent. The United States has partnered with Mexico as well as Central American and Caribbean countries to build capacity for those governments to deal with the grave security situation. Through the Merida Initiative, Central American Regional Security Initiative, and Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, we've been helping to give these partner countries the tools they need to confront the scourge of these transnational criminal organizations. We need to do all we can to confront this threat, particularly because this violence is happening right at our doorstep. Naturally, we need to be sure we're using taxpayer resources wisely and that we're employing the most effective strategies. The fact is, drug policy in the Western Hemisphere has been costly and has had mixed results. While CRS has determined we have spent upwards of $16 billion on this effort since the 80s, some outside experts have come up with less conservative estimates nearing the $1 trillion mark spent on counter-drug efforts in Latin America since 1970. That's a lot of hard-earned taxpayer money without results to match. This bill will mandate a commission to determine what has worked, what hasn't, what needs to be done going forward. I think that's common sense. I have included an amendment that places a firm limit on spending for this commission, not to exceed $2 million provided in the bill. This is a small investment to determine our best practices going forward to ensure that future U.S. taxpayer funds are realizing the results that they were intended. Thank you again, Ranking Member Engel, for your work on this issue. It's time to get this effort right, not only for the security of our country and communities, but for the taxpayer and those tasked with leading the fight. And I now recognize Mr. Engel for his remarks.
Thank you very much, Chairman Salmon. Thank you very much for holding today's markup of the Western Hemisphere Drug Policy Commission Act. And thank you for being the lead Republican sponsor of this bill. I also appreciate Ranking Member Siris's leadership on this subcommittee and his co-sponsorship of our bill. And as a former chairman of this subcommittee, I want to tell you it's always good to be back. This legislation would create an independent commission to evaluate U.S. policies aimed at reducing drug production and trafficking in the Western Hemisphere. The commission will be required to submit recommendations on future U.S. drug policy to Congress, the Secretary of State, and the Director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy 12 months after its first meeting. A similar bill, which I authored, passed the House of Representatives unanimously in 2009. Didn't pass the Senate. That's why we're here. I'm determined to bring this bill across the finish line and to the President's desk this time around. With $15.7 billion spent on counter-narcotics programs in Latin America and the Caribbean between 1980 and 2012, it is important to take stock of what has worked, what has not worked, and what future U.S. drug policy should look like. While billions of taxpayer dollars have been spent over the years to fight the drug trade, illegal drug use in our country remains high. In particular, I am concerned by the dramatic increase in heroin use in our country. Attorney General Eric Holder recently noted that heroin overdose deaths in the United States increased by an alarming 45% between 2006 and 2010. On the supply side, nearly all cocaine consumed in the United States originates in South America, while most heroin consumed here is from Colombia and Mexico. And Central America and the Caribbean are key transit regions for drugs entering our country. I am particularly concerned that the drug trade has shifted back to the Caribbean, with 16% of cocaine imports into the United States coming through the Caribbean last year compared to 4% in 2011. To tackle our nation's horrific drug problem once and for all, we must have a better sense of what works and what does not work. our partners in the Americas who have worked closely with us in fighting drug trafficking for years, and the citizens of our great country who deal every day with illegal drugs on their streets deserve no less. So in closing, I'd like to once again thank Chairman Salmon for holding this morning's markup, and I urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeSantis, did you seek recognition? All right. Are there any further amendments to the base text? No? Hearing no further amendments, the question is on agreeing to H.R. 4640 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the text is agreed to. Without objection, H.R. 4640 as amended will be reported favorably to the full Committee on Foreign Affairs, and staff is directed to make any technical and conforming changes. And that concludes our business, and without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned. That's got to be a record, right? Thank you.